Welcome to the Rooted in Community podcast. My name is Celia Coughlin-Surridge, and I'm here to bring authentic, community-focused conversations about online marketing to you on a bi-weekly basis. Let's face it, getting the word out about your nonprofit, service, or product is one of the first obstacles anyone faces when trying to grow their organization. Between all of the different social media platforms, opinions shared by influencers and podcasters, and the bells and whistles that are all screaming for your attention, a state of overwhelm seems right around the corner. Thankfully, it doesn't have to be that way. Grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and relax as we discuss online marketing tips, tricks, techniques, and strategies to grow your audience by providing value to those you serve. Welcome to the very first episode of the Rooted in Community podcast. If you don't already know who I am, my name is Celia, and I'm the creative director and co-founder of Modern Roots Marketing. We're a digital marketing firm based out of Sacramento, and our mission has always been to simplify digital marketing with our clients' best interest in mind, meaning we would like to make sure that everything that we do on behalf of our clients is something that we can eventually train them on. This is where Rooted in Community was born. We actually started a process called the Rooted in Community process, where we onboard clients with a very specific idea of being community focused. We want to share what we know with you and hope that you and your organization can take those things, implement them, grow your audience, and achieve the thing that you are meant to do with the principles that we talk about in this podcast. On today's episode, we bring on Mary Nauer, the Community Relations Director and co-founder of Modern Roots Marketing, who also happens to be my mother. She's in charge of scheduling our social media, and she is phenomenal when it comes to our public relations and the direct relationships we have with our clients. So without further ado, let's roll that tape. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our very first Rooted in Community podcast episode. My name is Celia, and my guest today is Mary, who happens to be my mother and is also the co-founder of our marketing firm, Modern Roots Marketing. Would you like to introduce yourself? You are our Community Relations Director, so you are one of the best people to talk to about community-focused marketing, which is what we're going to be talking about during this episode. So please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, yes, my name is Mary, and I work with Celia. She is my daughter, as she mentioned. We've been at this for a couple of years now, and it's been quite an interesting ride. We've definitely had our ups and downs, but it's been very rewarding as well. We both wanted to have a business that was community oriented. We have roots in small business and in nonprofits. Both of us have been involved in nonprofits in the past. I had been a small business underwriter several years ago and have been in business communications. And so bringing those things together was something that we could do through opening our company.
Yes. We're nearing, actually, as this podcast is being released, we will be celebrating kind of like a month-long remembrance of our opening 2 years ago, and I say that because we launched the website October 8th, but became an actual bona fide business on November 1st. So Mom and I constantly go back on what exactly is our official first day in business. So we just celebrate all the month of October. So yeah, and that's where Rooted in Community actually ended up coming up. Rooted in Community is actually a program that we offer, which is if you want to work with us one-on-one or within your company, we have a 3-month onboarding that we do with all of our clients, which is, an introductory period where we really get to know you. We have tons of questions that we ask. We have an onboarding call. We execute what you've hired us for within those 3 months. And then we do a wrap-up call and see if we want to continue on a month-to-month. And what we really realized through that whole process is that community-focused marketing is something that can be done. What that means is, you're actually really looking at your content. And that's what we're going to be diving into in this episode. But that's where the idea for this podcast came from, is that there are lots of different podcasts out there that can, talk about marketing or talk about all of the different programs that you should be implementing or talk about the new cutting edge that's happening on Instagram or TikTok right now. But what I personally have been lacking in the podcast that I've been listening to, or what I've seen has been lacking, is honest communications about how you can build your audience and how you can use the tools of online marketing organically and authentically to grow your audience. And that's really that community-focused marketing that we're going to be talking about today. One of the most recent topics to be coming up is Netflix documentary, which is, Mary, what's it called again? I can't remember.
The Social Dilemma.
Yeah, The Social Dilemma. And we actually had two very different responses to that. I had a total anxiety attack, and Mom, on the other hand, was like, oh, it was information I already knew. It didn't seem to bother you quite the way that it bothered me. But I think, that's the hot topic right now, is how do we utilize these tools that is in a positive way, that it is not feeding into the negativity that's happening right now. And so we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. And Mary, Mom, I will use that interchangeably during this entire episode. But let me ask you, what does community-focused marketing mean to you?
Well, community to me is like-minded people. They don't have to live in the same town. They don't have to have the same religious background or anything like that, but they are together and focused on coming together. Mm-hmm. And what was the question?
The question is, what does community-focused marketing mean to you?
So community-focused marketing is reaching out to those people who would have an interest in what you're doing and getting them basically to jump on the bandwagon with you and go on your particular journey, whatever it may be. You can reach people through social media in a variety of ways. A lot of people go for just the flash, and sometimes they gain followers that way. Sometimes people just look and move on. With building a community, we want people to stick with you. Mm-hmm. So our emphasis is on visuals and content and not the flashy stuff at all. It's usually pretty straightforward, fact-based, and real. We've all got things that are important to us, and we don't want those to fall by the wayside. We can speak to people about our beliefs and values without it getting overly political, and just be good stuff for people to read and relatable. That's the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. It has to be relatable for someone to want to continue to follow you and care about what you're doing.
Right. No, I completely agree. And we were talking about this just a couple of weeks ago. We as a marketing firm, the Modern Roots marketing side of things, we have tried, Facebook ads. We have tried Google ads, and there is a propensity for those to work for sure. But part of us being authentic to who we are is releasing value-based content that's actually helping our audience. And I think that's a huge part of community-focused marketing, and that you don't necessarily need to spend thousands of dollars in ads to reach people. If you're putting valuable content out there, it will be shared with the people that you want it to be shared, and that will bring in the clientele, or the donors if you're a nonprofit, or just the general type of audience that you're looking for. So I think you're absolutely right there for sure. So when we're talking about community-focused marketing, and our listeners are wondering, how do we bring a more community-focused approach into your online marketing presence? And when we're talking about online marketing, we're talking about, social media, email marketing, your website, your overall branding. And, for me, with your overall brand, making sure you're community focused is making sure that your website and your branding is actually speaking to the audience that you're hoping to bring in, the people that you are truly advertising yourself to, or you're here to serve. If you have a website or a brand that's full of technical terms, and you are, for example, a service that provides something for doctors, then having a high-level keyword or a high-level terminology is completely acceptable, because that is who you're trying to reach. But if you're trying to reach, your average everyday person, what is the language that they're speaking? And maybe there's a regional language or, lingo that you can utilize, but really focusing on what your audience is saying naturally is what you need to bring into your brand and your website. Same with your social media and email marketing. You want to make sure that what you're saying really reaches them and is really, either thought-provoking or, something that people can relate with. And Mary, you're our social media expert. When you're thinking about using community-focused strategy within what you're scheduling, what is it that you're doing to try to incorporate that with your social media schedule?
Well, I try to do a variety of things. When I'm looking at content from others, it goes back to the relatable side of things. And so I'm looking at, articles, videos, whatever I come across online that are really helpful to people. They're interesting, they're helpful, they make sense. That's why I love the TEDx videos so much. You can find them on every topic under the sun. And some of them are scientific, of course, but it's broken down into regular speech. But most of them are personal experiences, and I think people can really relate to those. We put up quotes, and, especially these days, people are looking for positive things. They're looking for good in their lives. So, and they're looking for encouragement in a variety of ways. Encouragement on their professional side, on their personal side, just, how to get through this challenge and feel good about things. So, we do put up, I guess, technically people would call them inspirational or motivational quotes, but they're only ones that really speak to me. I'm not going to just put up anything. They're things that speak to me. A lot of quotes from women, quotes from spiritual leaders, and, others who are well respected. And then, our content, when we write blogs, always writing with the standpoint that whoever's reading it has no prior knowledge of what the subject matter is. So we're trying to break it down. We're not dumbing anything down. We're just trying to break it down so it's understandable, because the people that we're reaching out to, the small business owners and those within the nonprofit community, it's not that they're not higher level thinkers. They're just, they don't they aren't marketers. So they are wanting to do marketing and learn about it so they can further their businesses and nonprofits, but they're just people. And we need to keep that in mind. So yeah, it's pretty simple, really. I don't think you need to overthink your content, but you definitely, it's a mindful approach as to what's going to reach people. And I love putting posts together and the images. I love, that creative side of putting things like that together. So I have my pet peeves, when I go through my social feed and see posts from other people and see ones where it seems like no thought was put behind it at all, or is kind of like a boilerplate template that's been used for the image. That drives me nuts because I feel like that's a real cop-out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also really easy to get kind of swallowed up by the ads that we are currently seeing on social media. If you are in a certain type of work, Facebook will start spitting advertisements out to you that are actually vicariously in your field of work as well. And so you're seeing people doing the things that you do, and then you start the comparison game. And that can be a really dangerous game because you then are looking at, the pros and cons of what you're doing. You're over analyzing, you're second guessing yourself. And sometimes you just have to remind yourself to put the blinders on and say, this is me. And that goes back to being your authentic self. If you are doing what's right for you and your brand and your organization, then people are going to follow you because they like you for being you. They aren't going to follow you because you happen to copy this exact template off of somebody else. And people are looking for people who are willing to just be honest and open in themselves. And, perfection is more of a theory than I think something that's actually attainable, even though I am a closet perfectionist. And so it's one of those things where I think that if you can accept that you're just doing the best that you can, that is what's going to get you far. And that's what's going to do well overall. So when we're talking, sorry.
I was just going to say too, sorry. I was really paranoid when we first started doing this about being too salesy. How do you find that fine line? How do you find the balance? Because there is a fine line between being too salesy, not being salesy enough. But like you said, if you're authentic and if you know your brand and have, your messaging in place, that just kind of comes together. It's not that you can't ever, promote what you're doing, but just by being out there and showing what you look like, you're naturally promoting your services.
Yeah. And actually that brings up, it's one of my favorite quotes, but I can never remember it verbatim. And I believe it was Kathleen from the Being Boss podcast, which I will probably mention several times because that's one of my favorite podcasts. But Kathleen, basically her quote was essentially that if you are sharing your story authentically, then you won't have to feel like you're selling because you're naturally selling yourself just by sharing who you are, what you do naturally. I'm going to have to pull that up and reference that at some other time. But it's so true. If you're being authentic to yourself and your brand and you're just sharing your story, the sales will naturally come. People will naturally want to be with you. Or if you're a nonprofit, they'll naturally want to donate. You won't have to beg, and it's because people are compelled by who you are, your story, what you're selling, the service you provide, and the charity that you are part of. So I think you're absolutely right with that. When we're talking about social media in particular, a lot of conversation comes up about engagement. And so, for me, engagement is liking, sharing, commenting, etc. But when we're looking at your community and being community focused, Mary, in your opinion, what are best practices for engagement when trying to be community focused? I mean, it's not practical to try to comment and like everything that your followers are doing. Obviously, commenting back when they have said something on one of your posts is probably key. But what other suggestions would you have?
Yeah, I usually, unless I see something that I really, really like, I normally wouldn't comment on someone else's post. I would just click to like it. And because there's a fine line with that too. You don't want to be seen as a troll
Yeah.
or someone who's, just making a comment because they want that person in turn to start following them and get their business. I don't care for that. When we get messages, particularly on Instagram, when we get messages from other companies that say kind of random things, that's just a major red flag. I don't get it. It bugs me. But yeah, I certainly, I go through the feed, several times a day and, like posts, and I'm encouraged by anyone who likes our posts and, the increase in followers. And yeah, it's a give and take as far as that goes.
Right. For sure. Well, great. Well, we're coming up to the end of our time today. And I just wanted to ask you, what else would you like to share about community-focused marketing, or maybe like a little bit of, like that little nugget of inspiration that somebody's looking for today?
I think, it's not all about the numbers. It's not all about the numbers of followers, and it takes time. It takes time to start gaining traction. And you don't always see how far you reach for a while. I don't know, because I've had people, comment verbally that they've seen our posts, yet I've never seen their like or follow come through. So you are reaching people whether you have something tangible from it.
Right.
So yeah, and as long as you're true to your brand, true to yourself, you shouldn't have any second thoughts about what you're posting. But I do think, especially these days, positivity goes a long way. And that's not to say that people post negative things. Of course, we know there's a lot of political negative stuff out there, but I don't think in general companies post negative things. But I think a lot of companies are too focused on sell, sell, sell.
Right.
And they feel like, social media is for selling. Whereas my concept is that it's a way for people to get to know us. And I don't know, I've gained a lot of good camaraderie with nonprofits and businesses through social media, and just, appreciating what they do, and, they're appreciating what we do. And sometimes it results in business, and sometimes it's just, camaraderie. And that's, they can be a part of the community as well. They don't have to be giving us their business necessarily. We can still gain from that camaraderie and that larger community support, even though they're not supporting us financially. So
For
I
sure.
think that's something to keep in mind too. It's not, it's not all about an actual monetary payoff.
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for joining us today on our very first episode of Rooted in Community. We are going to be seeing you on a regular basis over the course of the next year. We're super excited to be bringing you this wonderful online experience wherever you're listening from. And thanks again, Mary, and I'll be talking to you
Thank you.
soon. Thank you so much for listening today. We are just over the moon excited that we are finally able to bring the Rooted in Community podcast to listeners like you. You can find out more about the Rooted in Community podcast and read our show notes at www.ricpodcast.com. The Rooted in Community podcast is brought to you by Modern Roots Marketing, where we believe that online marketing should be rooted in community.